Hello, hello. Welcome to Rebecca Williams, my guest this week. How are you, Rebecca?
Yes, I'm very well. How about yourself?
Yeah, very good. I really appreciate you coming along onto this call, onto this podcast, because obviously you're a busy lady. I mean, when I was researching what you do and where you're at, I'm like, wow, phew. So Rebecca is the founder of an award-winning accountancy firm, EME. She is herself a chartered accountant by day. She founded a business called Miss Financial Tutorials, and I would like to hear a little bit more about those tutorials. It sounds really interesting. In her spare time, she's a public speaker to bookkeepers and accountants at such events as ICB, and she has only just returned from a roadshow as well, which I'm sure we'll hear more about. She was nominated as ICB Social Media Influence of the Year nominee for 2 years running. Let's go for a win next year, Rebecca. And worked as the ICAEW NWCASS president for 2 terms. Oh boy, what a busy lady. Do tell us more about what you've been up to, because I've just said you've come back from a roadshow, and you've just said that you've been talking through that. Tell me a little bit more about what's going on there.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. I felt a little bit like a bit of a rock star, really.
Oh, it sounds like you're a rock star.
Um,
Oh,
because I've been literally touring the UK. So I've been in Glasgow, I've been in Edinburgh, I've been in Reading, Leeds, Chelmsford, Brighton, London, just everywhere, all throughout October and then a little bit into November as well. And not only have I had the pleasure of doing that and talking on stage about attracting and supporting talent and how to retain staff, etc.,
yeah.
in the climate that we have, because we actually have a talent shortage of staff in the bookkeeping and accountancy industry right now.
Yes, I've
Um,
heard about it.
but I've been really lucky because the other guest speakers that have been on there have been the likes of like Johan Gorey, and Aaron Patrick, the Quickbooks chap, Rachel Harris, Reza as well has been there.
Oh, right, yes.
So it's been nice to speak to each one of those and just have that time, because you don't really get that sometimes, with all the things that are going on and all of our diaries and calendars. So it was nice just to, yeah, share a few laughs and have tea together and breakfast together. So yeah, I've been really lucky.
Oh, wow, that's brilliant. So for people who are just tuning in, I'm talking here to Rebecca Williams, and one of the things that this podcast is all about is understanding people's journeys, how they've got to where they are now, the challenges that they faced. But it was good to start on a high, wasn't it? It was good to say, look what's been going on, and you've been having a great time and getting out there and meeting people. Did you say that was the QuickBooks one that you were on?
Yeah, the
Okay.
Quickbooks Roadshow,
All
or
right.
Quickbooks Connect.
Well, it sounds brilliant. I didn't even know they had a roadboat show, so that's interesting. And just a little aside here, years ago, I did bookkeeping for a friend of mine. I'd been in a finance organization, and I'd been trained up on various things, but not actually qualified in them. And I did her books, mostly because I was a bit of a VAT whiz at that time. Couldn't tell you what goes on with VAT these days. But interestingly, she had QuickBooks, and it must have been in their early days, because I don't know what she did. I would do it all. And then somehow, between me finishing it, getting it all balanced, it was marvelous. And then when I went back the next quarter, something had changed. It's like,
Yeah.
no idea. What have you done? I mean,
Oh
I
no,
don't think she was doing it deliberately, but she
no.
was entering stuff in to help me out. But it was like, no, I had to go through a reconciliation before starting. So yeah, QuickBooks are clearly much better these days. Awesome. So what I'd like you to do, if that's okay, this podcast is about people's journeys to now, because when we look at people, when we're scrolling through that social media and whatever, there's a big tendency to take what they're saying in the now as the only thing that's ever happened. So a
100%.
lot of people assume, because we've just said how much of a success you've been over the last 2 years, what with your awards, your Miss Financial Tutorials, your roadshow speaking, etc., there might be a tendency for people to think you've just arrived. And look, why is that not happening for me? And of course, it's not like that. What they don't see is the toil and the struggle and the effort that you've put in. So do you want to just introduce yourself now yourself, and then we'll go through your story, your learning journeys and the key points that you've got?
Yeah. So do you mean where I am now? So what
Yes. Yeah, what
day
you're
to day sort
doing.
of looks like?
Mm.
Yeah. So over I decided to set up the my Accounting Made Easy EME firm just after lockdown, because I was speaking to a lot of different people who were running their own business, all these bookkeepers who were doing this fantastic job. And previously, I'd worked in practice for 8 years, and then I'd moved into industry where you work in a company in their finance department.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so I was running their finance department, and I had staff underneath me, and we were running these different companies, which was great. So I'd had that previous, really practiced financial core reporting experience, and then on the other side, actually running a company, which is very, very different.
Well, I can only
Um,
imagine.
and I thought to myself, it was one of those moments where I was again talking to all these people, reading all of these books, watching on YouTube all these stories and all these podcasts, and I suddenly thought, I could do that, and why don't I give it a shot? And if I don't give it a shot now, I'm never going to do that. So I just literally just dropped everything, did all my research that I needed to do, and just went for it. So yeah, it's I'd have to say it's been a fun journey in that time. But I would say in the last 2 or 3 years, I've probably learned more, not just about the business, but about myself as well, than I ever have done in the previous, 14, 15 years before that.
I love what you've just said there. A couple of things that you said, and I just want to pull out, is that you just went for it. You showed some real courage in doing that. It's quite a scary thing, isn't it? Just to walk
Absolutely.
away from a monthly salary to suddenly being in charge of everything. So it takes great courage, and hats off to you. It took me a long time before I did it, and I've done it twice. So it's not a fun thing. So well done. And I'm finding more and more people are finding the courage, because it's the only way to get back a level of I'm going to use the term work-life balance. I know some people don't like it, but that idea that you're starting to live life, not just work. And I think COVID helped with a lot of that. Lots of bad things about
Definitely.
COVID. We don't want to put that out there as being not a good thing, but I think for a lot of people it was a real wake-up call. And I absolutely love what you said. And that's why I've asked you here today. It just validates me asking you, is that you've learned so much about yourself, because I think you do, don't you? You're putting to new situations, you're challenging yourself, you're finding things that are something for you to get over. And that's the things that would be really lovely to find out more what happened for you.
Yeah.
So if I was to ask what in this, because you said, was it 2018 you went out? No, 2020.
It's around, yeah, 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your transformation been like? I mean, where were you then, and where are you? What did you go through to get where you are now?
So it was really funny. And I don't say this lightly. So I do a lot of reading. I do. I make sure that I do, because, I always think that we can continuously learn new things about ourselves and also the things around us and perception. So I do a lot of reading, but as I say, I did all of that research, 12 months beforehand, and I was listening to other people's stories and how they found things, because I was determined that this was not going to fail. Um, and I knew, you don't just open a business tomorrow and then all of the clients walk through the door. That's not how it works. And I think, like you said, it's really easy to look at somebody's profile on LinkedIn or on YouTube and go, well, you did this in 12 months, and that's everybody's story. It's that you don't know the factors that have happened behind the scenes. So I wasn't naive enough to think, okay, open a business, going to get income from, day dot. And I also wasn't naive enough to think that I'm going to open a business and everything's going to be hunky dory and I'm going to know everything that I need to do and, all of that. And my partner actually sat me down, and I tell this story all the time because he's very much like me, and we tell facts. So, we had this conversation and he sat me down and he said, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. I was like, okay, go ahead. He said, opening a business is going to be difficult. And it's only going to be difficult because you have been an employee your entire life. And, you know, from school years, all you're taught is you go, you do your exams, you get a job. That's you for the rest of your life until you retire. So when you're an employee, you know, there are additional bonuses to being an employee, as you know. You know, you get your holiday, you get your bank holidays, you are there to do a specific job. And if somebody said to you, you know, as the accountant, go and clean the toilets over there, you're like, hang on, that's not my job. You know, my job is doing the data entry or it's preparing your own accounts. So he said to me, when you open up your business, just be aware that overnight, you're no longer the accountant. You are also the sales department, the marketing department, social media, etc. You know, you've got to manage cash flow. You've got to go and get the clients in. So all of that, your procurement, you're all these different things. You're the IT department all of a sudden. Just be prepared for that. So I took all of that. I took all of that in, and it was funny because again, I'm very open-minded to what, you know, information I receive. And I sat there thinking, well, I can do that, you know, no bother, a little bit naive, you know, and
so say all of us.
went out there and did it. But I have to say, looking back now, it was only, I'd say, 18 months into the business that I realized that I was still actually running a business with an employee's mindset. And what I mean by that is most business owners go into running a business because, as you say, you want the work-life balance, you want to be in control, and you don't want to ask, you know, to leave an hour early one day or get up and do the time. But it was, I think a lot of business owners fall down because they create a job for themselves. So because they're thinking with this employee mindset, they're not thinking of running a business. They're thinking, well, you know, I'm the electrician, so I'm going to be the one doing the electric work, or I'm the bookkeeper, I'm the one doing the bookkeeping. And they're not thinking, this is an actual business. How am I going to scale this business and get it to where it needs to be? So they're very unintentionally short-minded a lot of the time. Yes. And again, it was only in hindsight, looking back, that I think there's a lot of things that I did wrong, which is great because I've learned from them, that I wish I'd have known from day dot. But sometimes you can't learn those things from a book. You have to experience it to think, okay, I understand now. I'm going to take it this way.
Beautifully.
I hope that explains that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, years ago, I was in, I don't know, one of the big corporates I worked in, and there was a lot of grumbling about the quality of the younger recruits that were coming through, and how they were really bright and intelligent, but they had no common sense. Now I must do a podcast on common sense, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But you know, they had no common sense, and you almost had to educate them in some of the basics, never mind anything else. And I think that's the same when we go into business. We can be prepared cognitively, but emotionally and being able to respond to events happening around us, it's a whole nother ball game, isn't it? It's
completely.
The experience is always different to the learning, and I think that's where the struggle is with our education system. Is they're prepared educationally, but not practically to be able to apply that knowledge in different circumstances. So I love what you said there. That's brilliant. You also talked about some of the things that you were naive about. And I don't expect you to share everything, warts and all. Although if you do, that's great. But you know, what would you say were the key things that you were naive about and you learned very quickly to address? Would you be able to share some of those?
Yeah, and I can share this not just in my own practice, but also I do a lot of work with other bookkeepers and accountants, and you know, I've been subcontractor and contractor with those, so I've been able to lean into their business too and see things from their perspective. So I think the number one change, definitely, as I say, in the last 12 months, has been that I have learned to take the emotion out of it. And that sounds really simple in theory, but again, as a business owner, you're going to get clients who are not happy. You can have clients who you can go to the ends of the earth for and they're still not happy, or mistakes are made, or, you know, things happen in business, or, you know, you get feedback one day that is not the best, let's just say. And you can take all of that and think, well, I am the worst bookkeeper. I'm the worst accountant in the world. You really pull yourself down and be like, can I do this? And you could really question, well, yes, you're great at being the techie, the technician, I call it. But can you be a business owner and learn from that, fix the mistake if there is a mistake, and not take it to heart? And again, I do a lot of self-reflection. So, I consider myself as I'm not perfect and I'm always going to be learning, so I'm like a bit of a learning sponge. And when I started to realize that that was the case, not just for myself, but other bookkeepers too, that you can take things really personally. And I've seen some people actually shut the business down because they feel like they can't do this, and they again look on social media and see the shiny product that everybody's putting out there, and it's like, but you don't know what's happened underneath. And again, sometimes the client doesn't give you all the information. Things happen just like any business, but it's how you react to that. So I, again, now and I've started to adopt this in my personal life too. So I now only deal with facts. So God forbid, touch wood, if anything does happen or go wrong, or a deadline's missed, etc., it's, well, why did that happen? And let's look back at the facts. And can we avoid that happening again? Was it our fault? Was it, the client's fault? What's happened? And let's put in processes to make sure that doesn't happen again. And if it was our fault, apologize. If there's a fine to pay, we'll pay the fine, etc. Whereas again, you could take it the other way and be like, so many things have happened this week. I can't be a business owner. And, you can spend all of that energy and time, almost in that woe betide me sort of mindset. Whereas I just think that's happened, deal with it, move on. So that again was 12 months learning how to do that and deal with that.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting that you've said there, not taking things personally. Now, that's really quite a tough one to do for many people. But I guess when you think about it, and this is the challenge that I guess a lot of accountants and bookkeepers that I'm seeing have, is that they have been pretty much taught to work that way. So they are already on their left brain logic side most of the time. Unfortunately, they're being hijacked by their right brain, which is actually the creative brain, but it's also the part where the emotional content can creep out. So how did you manage to make that differentiation? I'm assuming when you do get no, I'll ask you and then I'll say what I think is happening. But how do you make that? Because there must be times when you're thinking, oh, ouch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And don't for one second think that, nothing phases me. That's not the case at all. You have good days, you have bad days. Again, things happen, things change that are out of your control. But I think it's that understanding of, as just in our line of business, we want to make sure that we've, dotted the I's and crossed the T's. That is not always going to be the case, because again, you are running a business and things happen. So, and it could be, again, something from HMRC side that they've messed up that you've now got to deal with, or they've sent a letter to your client that's got nothing to do with your client. The client panics. You're in the middle of a deadline yourself. They ring up. You can't just say, deal with you later, because then they're panicking. So it's right, drop that, pick that up over there. So it's a skill set that you have to create. And again, this is not something that's happened overnight. This has been, I have a setback and I'll give myself 10 minutes to cry about it.
Oh, I like it. You give yourself a little window.
Yeah. So
yes.
Get it out of your system if you need to. And then, right, facts now, how are we going to deal with it? And I guess when I was an employee, I was really, really good at this, where if there was something I didn't want to do, guaranteed that would be on my mind for the next 5 days, but I would put it off and put it off and put it off. Whereas now I think I genuinely, very deeply believe in that individuals only have a certain amount of energy in a given day. So I think of a pot of energy. So you've got 100, in your energy pot. And for every thought process that you have, And everything that you do in that day, every conversation, slowly that's dwindling down. So if you use up all of that energy in that pot on thinking about the stuff that you've got to do without actually doing it, again, you're causing yourself further issues from, just from your personal mindset point of view. So it's right, if this has happened, you have that little window of 10 minutes to cry in a corner, if that's what you need to do, or talk to somebody, 10 minutes, and then we're going to see what do we need to do. And that's the first thing that's going to get done. We're not going to think about it anymore. It's not going to be on the desk for tomorrow. It's today.
Yeah.
So
I'm loving that. That's brilliant. I like the energy pot. Might pinch that. Yes.
take
About
it.
Emotional energy.
Yeah.
And mental energy obviously as well, but yeah, well, that's great. So in your experience, what are the key characteristics of individuals who have a strong learning mindset? Because what I'm hearing here is you're very much taking life as it comes and dealing with it there and then, whereas back in your employee days you might, let's leave that, and I know that one. Can still find that one creeping up every so often. But yeah, so what would you say is the characteristics of a learning mindset then? Because I think you have given them here, but just, if you can just, reiterate them, that would be great.
I think it's somebody who, again, you can't, just in life in general anyway as well, you can't go about things as if you know everything. You don't know everything. You're never going to know everything. And I think particularly in bookkeeping and accounting, I see a lot of individuals fall down because they think that they need to know everything. And it's a case of you don't. What you need to know, having a strong mindset, is knowing you don't know it, but where do you know where to ask to find that information out, and you know how to action that. So I think it's that having almost that knowledge that you're never going to know everything just from a technical point of view or from running a business, but having that willingness to learn and listen to other people and their perspective. And I read something the other day actually, which was interesting. And apparently the human brain can only perceive 0.0035% of what's going on around us. So
yeah, it's a very small amount. I learned it slightly differently, that we can only
ridiculous.
process. Is it 7 to 8 pieces of information at any one time?
Yeah.
Meltdown.
So when you're, again, like from a personal point of view, when you're looking at past historic events or things that have traumatized you, essentially, you look at a past event that's not gone the way you want it to. I always think, well, your perspective is like this, and then someone else's perspective over here is going to be like this. So you've got to have the humility to understand that their perception of something that has happened is going to be a little bit different to yours. So when you're dealing with clients, again, their perspective is going to be different to yours because they don't have the knowledge that you have to know that that's okay. That letter from HMRC is okay. We can deal with it like that. But from their perspective, it's, oh my God, I've received a letter from HMRC. So it's, yeah, I guess it's just having understanding and humility, I think, makes a stronger person.
I like that, understanding and humility. You are absolutely right. I can't remember the numbers. I'm a wordsmith, so but I do know when we were doing it, it was 7 bits of information on average that we're processing at any one point in time, which means there's a whole raft of things going on that we're not even aware of. And that's the gap, and that's why I very often say to people, you are so much more than you realize, because you're only aware of about those 7 bits, not the millions of bits that are going on at any one time. So thank you for bringing that up. You're doing very well, thank you. And I love the you did talk about self-reflection earlier, and that's sort of what you're saying here, is you don't know everything, and having a willingness to learn, and that comes from humility. That's beautifully said. I couldn't ask for better, actually. That's perfect.
Oh, thank you.
So we've talked about how you've overcome some of the challenges you face, and so how you're managing your own personal growth and learning. And you said you read a lot. What are you reading right now?
So right now, I've just started The Diary of a CFO. But my favorite people of all time have got to be the likes of Dave Ramsey, Jordan Peterson, both Canadian American. And also the authors of if you've heard of like the E-Myth Revisited or the original
Oh gosh.
E-Myth,
Yes, I read
all
the
of
original
that.
one.
Michael, and the chimp paradox, all of that sort of thing. That is right up my alley. And I do read a little bit of fiction at the same time, but it's generally in the working day. I'll put a podcast on in the background, and that's what I'm listening to. I can't work in silence; it doesn't work for me. But that just enables me to have a little listen and go, "Oh, okay, yeah, get that." So yeah, I think if I said I had a passion, it would be just listening to other people's stories and seeing how they've done things, to see how I can do it, because again, nobody gives you that manual to say this is how you run a business.
Oh, there is no manual, because every business is different and every
Yeah,
person is different, and we're all unique, aren't we? That's what
yeah,
I love about us as human beings, is we are all unique based on not just our genealogy and our genetics, but also the learnings that we've and experiences we've been through. So absolutely. I'll tell you the one person I'm listening to more, shall I say, is Simon Sinek. Now, I've known about him for a long time, but it's interesting because he sort of is saying the same thing as you, is that he has humility. He has no problem being in a room full of people who know it. I was going to say know it all, but that's not true necessarily, but people who know their stuff, and he's absolutely open to turning around and saying, actually, I don't know, you're gonna have to tell me. I don't know the answer to that. And I love that it's just a different level, isn't it? I think it's showing a level of actually, I'm just normal like you, but he's a very
yeah.
clever man. I like him a lot.
And do you find as well? I don't. The way that we were taught, going through studies for bookkeeping and accounting, if you worked in practice, my experience was always you don't ask questions. You can ask a question once, but you're expected to know what the answer is after that.
During just professional training, or was that?
Yeah, during
Oh
professional
no, I
training.
didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
It's not always the case. I had a particularly bad experience in my student days. But the thing is that as an employee, when you're working as well, it's almost, I was always told knowledge is power. And,
Yes.
people kept knowledge to themselves. And when I used to ask a question, it was very much guarded because they were safeguarding their own employment,
Worked with a few people
essentially.
like that.
Um, and so when I got to the point where I became chartered, I have this sort of saying where I say there's no stupid questions, and I really mean that, because I've probably asked every stupid question in the entire book of existence, and I'm not, I don't care. Take from it what you will. I'll keep asking until I get to where I understand. So I think as a business owner, if you're going out into the world, you've got to keep asking those questions. You can't be afraid to think, well, I was really good at my job here, but therefore I know all this, how to run the business. You don't. So just keep asking and asking and asking, and that way you will grow a lot quicker than thinking,
And again, thank you. You're so right. This is really the sort of thing that I'm talking about, because there is no such thing as a fact technically, because it changes. We think about science, 100 years ago, computers would have what? And
Yeah,
that's come back around through an evolution of things, hasn't it? From the Second
yeah,
World War, from the Enigma machine and the whole development of the first computer, all the way through to today. And things shift and change. And even, let's be honest, within the accounting world, the rules and regulations can change. So you'll never know it all, will you?
no, they change every year. And this again, what I tell to the newer bookkeepers and accountants coming in, and they're like, oh well, this has changed now and I can't keep up, and this has happened and this is the way it used to be. And I'm like, yes, but this is why we have CPD and why you have to make sure that you do continuous learning, and it is constant. But then at the same time, get involved and ask questions and go on webinars and all of that. And it doesn't seem so daunting then. The more you talk about something,
Yeah.
the less daunting it is. But it is that again, you're never going to know everything. It's just
No,
not possible.
no, absolutely. And what I love about that as well is the fact that you are the learning mindset then, aren't you? You're open to it, and it's almost that fear of being exposed for not knowing. And I can
Yeah,
understand that now from the professional perspective. I know with my own, I was always a bit concerned. I didn't know it, but I needed to process it my way, not the way they're telling me. So I've got a bit of a different way of thinking. So they may tell me something, but I need to process it my way. I was joking the other day about learning my times table. I think it was the thing that did me with numbers, quite frankly. My dad used to just fire these things at me and I'd have to have the answers. Well, I knew the common ones, but you get to the 8s and 9s and it's like, oh, I don't know. I can't see a pattern there. And what happened was that did cause me a problem later on. And, you know, had I had the time to process, because I now know, show me and I can do it. But in my head, it's not happening.
No, I'm the same. If you talk at me, I always say this over and over. I've never ever learned anything in the classroom ever. So I was in the top sets. I always did my best, you know, went to college and did all of that, did my A-levels, but I never learned anything in the classroom ever. So I always had to go home, reverse engineer it, test it out a few times until I understood the pattern of something, and then I could pick it up.
Yes.
Or visually, I can see things. Like the times table. I taught my younger sister how to do the times table, but the only way that I could remember it was by having the times table. Like I can visually see it even now, where things are and how they lined up in this way.
Oh,
to
well done
understand the
you.
numbers. Yeah, but otherwise, again, if you tell me, it just goes right over my head. So I understand.
Thank you. Yeah. So very much visually, and I do think sometimes we process differently. So you can be in the same class as 100 other people, and they will all process in slightly different ways. It's our way of understanding, and I would like to learn more about how the brain does that, and that will be on the agenda at some point. But right now, I've gone and know enough, so that's good. So I love the fact that you say that there is no such thing as a bad question, because it's just either you've not been told or you've not been told in a way that works for you.
Exactly.
So absolutely. So that brings me really nicely onto your was it Financial Tutorials?
MissFinanceTutorials, that's right.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. That sounded really interesting.
Yeah, so obviously, as they lockdown happened, and previous to lockdown, I'd been involved with the student council for the Chartered Account Society. So I was looking after around 500 students in that time, and we would, you know, if there was issues with exams or student queries, we'd push them to the ICAW from there. But after I finished that, I was training students, so I was training like, you know, 16 students at one time. And then again, when I worked in industry, exactly the same, training people and training them on SEMA and helping answer questions that they had in the evenings and things. So when lockdown happened, there was a question that came up on a Facebook post. Now, I'm a very, very guarded person, so I'm not, you know, I don't put stuff out. But personally on social media, I'm very quiet. People often refer to me as an introvert because I'm not, you know, I'll put myself out there, but I'm very much, you know, I'm a home bird. So I wasn't on social media. And somebody said to me, look, there's been this post, nobody's answering. Can you answer this question? So I joined Facebook and I answered the question. And this kept happening. So I was just going online during my breaks or in the evenings and answering questions for students in this particular group. And then one day somebody said, well, I don't learn that way. So when you're answering this question in this way, I understand where your workings are coming from, but I don't get it. It's not going in. So I thought, well, I'm, let's say, very visual myself. And if I watch a video, like usually if I learn something, it would be on YouTube instead of reading a book sometimes. So I'd learn really quickly that way. And I could watch it back then in my own time, at my own pace. So I was like, okay, I'll pull a video together. So I put it up on Facebook. I created a new group, put this video up. And then someone said, well, that's great for all of us in the group, but nobody else is going to find it. And what if they need help where they are? Maybe they're in another country and they don't have access, or they've got to pay for tuition, but they want to be a bookkeeper or an accountant. So I said, okay, I'll open up a YouTube channel then. So that's where it was born. So yeah, I've just spent all of that time answering questions, breaking topics down and telling people how they can get into the industry. Or, you know, some days we'll look at different paths and different careers or different qualifications they can take and why one might be better for that career path than that one. And now it's moved into not just the student side, but also supporting those running a business and showcasing my journey so far and things I wish I'd have known, or, you know, AML that nobody likes, anti-money
Nobody
laundering
likes it.
regulations.
Nobody likes it, except the people who audit it and police
Yeah,
it.
that's it. So I try and break it down for them. And I actually had an inspection, so I can tell them how the process works and, you know, things that people tend to fall down on, to just try and help. So that's essentially it in a nutshell.
What a brilliant idea, though. So I did have a quick look at it, and I'm subscribed because, again,
Oh,
you know, I mean, I did do training up to balance sheet and profit and loss, and that was my accountancy done, and then did bookkeeping because I used to be an accounts payable manager, so I had to have a good understanding of VAT, and I was in charge of expenses, so understand what they could claim for.
yeah.
What's the funniest thing you've ever seen, or the most bizarre thing that's ever come through an expense claim? I had somebody
Oh,
who put his wife's outfit, handbag, and shoes through on expenses. Big event. What?
the best thing was when somebody bought a yacht.
No,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And it was a case of, sorry, what is this? Oh, well, I'm going to use it for entertainment, for client entertainment. Now, client entertainment is not allowable for tax purposes anyway.
Yeah.
So God knows what the previous accountant had been doing, but yeah, they bought a yacht and tried to put it through the business. And I was like, okay, interesting. We can't do that because you're an electrician again. So it's nothing to do with the business. Okay.
Yeah, it's very funny. I must admit I saw all sorts coming through, but the one, as I say, that was his wife's complete regalia for this. I don't know, it was an awards dinner or something. It was just, yeah, really bizarre.
We've seen it all though. There are, yeah, as I say, sometimes you have to look twice and think, really?
Yeah.
Really? No.
Yeah, to be fair, this must have been going back, oh God, at least 25 years, because I was working in a completely different role at that point. So yeah, it was a long time ago, but I had to put it through because they said, oh no, allow that to go through, you know. Crazy. Wouldn't do it now. Back in the day. Yeah, that'll be right. He's a director. God love him. So yeah, but brilliant. So I think you're right. And you touching on AML, I do know, having spoken to a large number of bookkeepers, that it scares the bejesus out of them.
Yeah.
And I remember when I mean, I came in when VAT was already well established, but even then to have a VAT inspection was really scary. And I guess, and when I think about the VAT side of things, a lot of that was down to the fact that their job is to find something. They got measured on what they found and discovered, not in helping you get through it. They're not interested in that. So their agenda is different. Is that the same with AML? The people who
It
come
is.
in?
And there's almost if you look at it this way, that you have a professional body and they are covering you for AML. So they're your supervisory body and for AML. But on one side, they're giving you information on how to comply with AML. But then on the other side, if you are inspected by them and you are found at fault for various reasons, then they're fining you also. So it's a bit of a contradiction between the two. So that's why, again, on the YouTube channel, every week now I'm putting a 10-minute bite-sized AML information video to, again, try and break that down and just showcase where you might not have looked, you want more information on this here, or if this has happened, look over here, and this is the guidance to break it down. But I think overall, all of the accountancy bodies can do a better job at providing information around it, definitely. Because that, even from my side, that's all I ever hear. But bookkeepers and accountants are worried about AML. It's like, if there was more information, then maybe that wouldn't be the case, or said in a different way. Again, you can
I
put the
do
paper
think,
out there,
yeah, the
but
presentation of it.
videos, webinars, seminars, podcasts, just keep talking about AML and it become less scary like anything else. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm doing my best on that front to help.
Yeah, well, it's all right. You're not leading a crusade. I do know a few others who have the same thing, but it does feel like a bit of a crusade, doesn't it? But I think when as an outsider, because I don't have to deal with AML, is this it's how you intake information, and it is such a big topic, isn't it? If it's anything like VAT, it's such a big topic, and having that presented in a way that you can digest it. They need to, and I don't understand it, but obviously it's an American term that's come over. Gamify it, make it more fun, not fearful, because the fear is actually closing their mind to taking the information in.
Yeah.
Where it's more fun and engaging. Hello, this looks good. And I just think it's those penalties that scare them. And I think that's hard, because they're obviously being targeted on making sure they're finding everything that they possibly can, which is right, in order to meet the government's requirements. But I think we just need to lower the temperature down a bit, and I don't know how to do that. If I ever come up with an idea, I'll reach out to you, Rebecca. But we do need to lower the temperature on it. But I think your bite-sized videos are brilliant, and I think definitely we need to get those out there a bit more. So I might be sharing that with one or two other people I know who are, if they don't know it already, they probably do.
Yeah.
But I'll just make sure they know it. Or if I'm talking to somebody and they're talking about AML, I'll refer them to your tutorials, because I think bite size it just allows us to absorb it. We're doing it in our own homes, so therefore the pressure of, because I don't know about you, I don't like to learn with lots of other people.
No, and I don't. Again, I cannot absorb information in a very busy area. Again, I say I can't work in silence, but I know my own limits, and I know, I can't sit there in an auditorium or, a lecture theatre and take it. That's never going to happen. So I've got to do it in my own time, in my way that I learn.
Yeah, mine's to write copious notes, never refer to them, pretty much, and then just revisit what we went through on the day. It's yeah, it's crazy, but it works for me. So it just means that all learning takes 3 times as long.
yeah, that's it. And we've not touched on this, but one of the reasons why I talk about this all the time, that like study technique is a technique for a reason. It's called that for a reason. And I actually failed one of my first exams when I was studying the chartership, and the reason was because previously, just like that, I liked my pretty notes. I wrote them out 3 or 4 times. They were very nice to look at. But all of that time spent rewriting notes was not actually going in. So I had to stop myself from writing pretty notes. And if you're like me and you are a stationery queen and you love pens and pencils and highlighters and everything, having to stop what you've done for the 20 odd years before that to then go to squiggly writing with just the facts, nightmare. But it had to be done.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're talking my language with the colours and whatever. I very often do that. And I've got a pot full of different coloured pens, although they are not the greatest coloured pens, because I can't see them when there's a pale green. And when you write with it, you can't see anything. It's
no.
So it's not good for reading either. Just a pretty colour outside pen, but there we go. So what have you got coming up? What have you got coming up? You've done so much in the last 2 years. You've been incredible.
Yeah.
Now.
So I've got a heck of a lot in the pipeline now. So I'm trying to, I'm quite organized, but I could be better. So over the weekend, as you do, I was organizing a few things and making sure that my diaries were all synced up and I've got them all in the one place, and my CRM system's up to date and all these different things, because I need to be organized. So on the YouTube channel, I have podcasts coming up every single week with a new guest. So, talking about different things such as grants for business owners, again, AML with one of the big software companies. Talking to Nick Craggs from First Intuition about the AAT qualification, basically all just to help, but that's coming up every single week, which means, again, I've got to be organised. From the business point of view, there's a lot going on from new prospects and new clients coming in, so I need to make sure that we've got all of that up to date and them on the portal and all of that's going on. Obviously, self-assessment return deadlines are coming up for January, so again, got a lot of work to do between now and then, because we don't actually work in the last 2 weeks of January. So everything's done before that. And then again, from the business point of view, this afternoon I'm actually hosting a webinar, which is understanding tax basics that anybody can join. So, and it's going to be recorded and put onto the YouTube channel. So again, just answer some questions, because I understand that, you know, at the moment, the way the economy is, not everybody can afford a bookkeeper or an accountant. So the opportunity to get in front of a chartered accountant and ask those questions, I thought would be a great idea, just to give back a little bit to the community. So yeah, lots and lots and lots going on.
Brilliant.
So I just, as I say, just need to stay organized and make
Yeah.
sure that we're on top of everything.
I hear you on the organisation front. As for the listeners, I messed this up a bit. I hadn't sorted out my calendars, syncing them, and so of course I had you scheduled for this afternoon. So absolutely, thank you for dealing with my disorganisation.
Oh, don't worry,
But it does happen, and one day I will get it all, you know, so it doesn't happen again. But I know this will be a problem at some point, because I know what it is now. At least I understand why they don't sync. It's because I changed my Google password, and of course then it's not syncing, and I'm like, okay, well, I didn't know that there is an impact on my Mac. Who knew?
No,
So
and there's an app actually that I use called One Calendar, where you can sync various different calendars from Google, Outlook, all across the board in one. And so you can have that on your computer, where, you know, if you've got your lock screen, for example, it will come up with all of the entries for that day to say you're here, you're here, you're here. But yeah, One Calendar, and it's free to use as well. So
oh, brilliant. So well done. I will definitely need to look at that, because I really do not want to get into that position again. And obviously for our listeners, One Calendar, get yourself organized. So before we bring it to an end, and I have to say, it's been really lovely talking to you, and I can hear so much of the things that I'm talking about coming out in here. So that's even better for me, because it's validating, you know, the sort of work that I'm doing with accountants and bookkeepers. But the last question I had was actually, it's a bit off-piste, but I do like it, because you've already said you love reading. So what was your favorite story as a child, and how do you think that might relate to your journey now? And just for the viewers, so they can, listeners, so they can understand, mine was The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Loved that book, and I read it really, really quickly. And it is about good and evil, but the overcoming of it so that everybody can gain from it, because obviously the witch had this really tight reign over Narnia, and you know, it was snow everywhere, and you know, nobody could do anything unless she told them, and then she turned them into blocks of stone or whatever. I love the idea that, you know, the good comes through, the people who are out to share, to community, to be with others and to fight together. I don't think we need to fight, but you know, that idea of working together for a greater good, I think, if that's how it is for me. But I love that story. What would yours be?
I have a few actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I actually really liked, and I know it's not a animated story, but I liked Oliver for
All right.
numerous reasons. And my mum loved Oliver too. And it was, I guess, from that, just the learning and, you know, understanding that, again, you know, not everybody is in the same situation you are, and there is actually hope at the end of the tunnel. If you're having everybody has bad days, we all do, or a bad year or a bad 2 years of COVID, etc. But there was that, and I used to actually watch the likes of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and also Jungle Book was a favourite from the age of 5 onwards. Obviously, I liked all of the princess stories growing up, because I was a little girl and I loved all that sort of thing. And yeah, I just think from all of them, particularly the Disney sort of you know, things, I think even from a young age, actually, I always looked at things from a different perspective, not just watching, but also what can I take from that, or what can I learn from that? And even now when I'm watching a film, I'm like, okay, you know, how can I somehow learn or incorporate that into what I'm doing now? So I've always been quite conscientious like that. And yeah, I don't know.
Brilliant. I must admit, You know, that's why Disney wasn't a big thing when I was a child. We're going
Mm.
back so many years. But I remember my first Disney film was Bambi. Oh, not good.
I can't watch Bambi. I'm
No,
too
I
much
was
of an
in,
empathic person. No, I can't watch it. It honestly just makes me cry. So I
yeah,
can't do it.
and it was, yeah, I hated it. I mean, I love it, but I hated it because of the
Yeah,
death scene that comes so early on in the
I
film.
know.
So I do some of Disney. So the only other one that really gets me or love it is Robin Hood.
I used to love Robin Hood.
I
Yeah,
love
but the
Robin Hood.
animated one.
Again, it's that theme of, the good coming together for the collective, isn't it? To
Yeah,
fight the things that are getting in the way. So I think that might be my theme. Maybe that's where I'm going. But yours is, I tell you what, I did love you said there, and I just to explain it a little bit, is you were saying that you ask yourself, what is it? What can I learn from this or that? I love that. It's called priming in my world. And you're
oh,
basically telling your unconscious mind to look for something to learn. You've done it so often cognitively and consciously. Your unconscious mind's like, well, what have I got to learn for? And it will look for it. You don't need to do it. Your unconscious will look for the thing to learn, because what you've done is primed it. And now it knows that's what you need to do.
oh wow. Well, I've learned something now. I
How
didn't know that.
fascinating is that? So when you do something, it's sort of like a habit. Because habits aren't learnt here, they're done at the unconscious mind, the deeper mind. And if once you've got the habit down there, which is why habits are hard to break, you can
Yeah,
consciously make up your mind you're going to quit smoking, you're going to go to the gym, whatever, but it doesn't always last, does it? So for those
no.
who do that, this is why. It's because it's at a deeper ingrained level. It's like a neural pathway that you've created, and so the brain's like, oh, that, there we go there. Oh, this, we go there. That's why.
Interesting.
So you've primed yourself. Well done. So we could all take a lesson out of that book. We all need to be able to prime our mind with that sort of question to develop a learning mind. What can I learn? Fabulous. So before we come to the end, how can people contact you if they want to, Rebecca?
So they can contact me through the website. So for the business, it's www.accounting.uk. So it's just accounting with an E at the front instead of an A.
I
Um,
loved that as well.
well, it's because I'm completely remote. So we're completely paperless, 100% online, cloud-based. So it's like electronic accounting made easy. That's where it comes from, accounting made easy. But we refer to it as EME just because it's a mouthful. So on there, there's all my contact details on there. Info@accounting.uk for, again, business inquiries, or through the YouTube channel, so MissFinanceTutorials. You can find me on there, ask me questions. And there's also an email address on there. You can ask questions about anything. And I'll always get back to you. I make a point of that. So I always put time aside in the week to answer any questions that anybody has. And I do get a lot of questions. Which I love. It's
Oh,
nice.
brilliant. That sounds awesome. Well, you've been a lovely guest today, Rebecca. Thank you so much for your time. And listeners, I will put those details in the comments below, because this is going immediately today, tomorrow, out on LinkedIn and onto YouTube, but later on it will be going out onto the podcast forums normally. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. It's been awesome.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure, Kim.